First Contact Protocol. The alarm that pierced through monitoring station Kepler 7 wasn't the standard proximity alert that the crew had grown accustomed to over their decades of service at the galaxy's edge. This sound, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the station's crystalline superstructure, was reserved for something that should have been impossible. Commander Zexhi's compound eyes swiveled independently as she processed the data streaming across multiple displays, her chitinous fingers dancing over the bio-neural interface with practiced precision. The Mentari had evolved for pattern recognition, their entire species serving as the galaxy's early warning system against cosmic anomalies. In her 40 years of service, she had cataloged neutron star collisions, rogue black holes, and even the occasional dimensional rift. But this, confirm readings, a specialist Vorthun. She clicked in the harmonic language of her people, her voice carrying undertones of disbelief. The ethereal form of Vorthun, a member of the gaseous nebulari species, shimmered as concentrated particles of his consciousness focused on the sensor array. When the nebulari spoke, it was like wind through crystal caves. Confirmed, Commander. Unknown vessel detected at coordinates 77 Mark Alpha 9. Distance, 3.7 parsecs and closing. Zexhi's secondary arms reached for additional interfaces while her primary manipulators continued the deep scan protocols. Classification? That's the problem, sir. The voice belonged to Kess, the station's Kithra analyst. The crystalline being's geometric form pulsed with confused patterns of light. The vessel appears in none of our databases. No known configuration, no registered energy signature, no transponder codes. According to our records, this ship doesn't exist. The command center fell silent except for the hum of processing systems and the distant thrum of the station's gravity generators. Zexhi felt the familiar tingle along her sensory antennae that indicated a significant event, the kind that would ripple through the Galactic Council chambers and disturb the comfortable routine of 1,000 worlds. Origin vector? She inquired, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Vorthun's form contracted, a sign of concentration among his people. Trajectory analysis indicates the vessel originated from the silent sector, bearing 297 Mark 15. Commander. That's beyond the galactic rim, the silent sector. Even the name carried weight among the galactic community. It was the designation given to the vast expanse beyond their galaxy's spiral arms, a region so devoid of detectable activity that most species had written it off as empty space. Expeditions sent there had returned with reports of absolutely nothing. No stars, no planets, no energy signatures of any kind. It was as if that region of space had been deliberately emptied, scrubbed clean of anything that might interest explorers. Specialist Kess, I want a full spectral analysis of that vessel. Vorthun, plot its current course and extrapolate destination probabilities. And someone get me a direct line to Admiral Thexran at Fleet Command. As her crew moved to execute her orders, Zexhi found herself studying the initial scan data with growing unease. The vessel itself was remarkable, sleek where most ships were utilitarian, curved where others were angular. Its hull seemed to absorb certain wavelengths of energy while reflecting others in patterns that hurt to look at directly. More troubling was its size. The ship was massive, easily dreadnought class, yet moved with the grace of a fighter craft. Commander, Kess's crystalline voice chimed with harmonics of alarm. I'm detecting impossible energy readings from the vessel. Define. Impossible. The ship appears to be generating power levels equivalent to a small star, but I'm detecting no fusion reactions, no antimatter signatures, no quantum tap indicators. The energy source is unrecognizable. Before Zexhi could respond, her communication array crackled to life with the gravelly voice of Admiral Thexran, the Corvan military leader whose scarred carapace had seen more battles than any living being in the galaxy. Zexhi, I'm seeing your preliminary report. Tell me this is a sensor malfunction. I wish I could, Admiral. We've run diagnostics 3 times. The vessel is real, and it's heading into our space. A pause that stretched across the light years between them. Have you attempted communication? Continuous hails on all frequencies, including quantum entanglement channels. The ship isn't responding, or perhaps can't respond. Sir, there's something else. The vessel's trajectory. It's not random, it's heading directly for populated space. Another pause, longer this time. When Thexaran spoke again, his voice carried the weight of command decisions. I'm dispatching the reconnaissance squadron Brightwing to your location. Continue monitoring and attempt communication. And Zexhai, prepare your detailed analysis. Protocols. The Council is going to want answers. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of activity. The unknown vessel continued its steady approach, neither accelerating nor decelerating, maintaining a velocity that suggested it would reach the outer colony worlds within 6 standard days. Communication attempts continued to yield nothing, but silence, though the ship showed clear awareness of their presence. Twice it had altered course slightly to avoid debris fields that the monitoring station's warnings had identified. It was Vorthun who made the breakthrough, his gaseous form practically vibrating with excitement as he materialized near Zexhai's command station. Commander, I've managed to penetrate their outer hull with deep quantum resonance scanning. Zexhai's antennae perked up. Life signs? Confirmed. But this is where it gets interesting. The biological signatures don't match any known species in our databases. Kess's geometric form shifted to a new configuration indicating high attention. Could it be a previously unknown species? The readings are unusual. Bilateral symmetry, carbon-based biochemistry, warm-blooded with what appears to be calcium-based skeletal structure. Relatively short lifespan compared to most spacefaring species, perhaps 70 to 100 standard years. Zexhai felt her compound eyes narrow in concentration. Something about those specifications triggered a memory, a half-forgotten lecture from her academy days about xenobiology. Vorthun, run those biological parameters against the historical archives. Deep search, not just current databases. Already in progress, Commander. I should have results within... Wait. The nebulari's form suddenly contracted to a dense point of swirling gas. Commander, you need to see this. The main display shifted to show an ancient text, the script so old that the translation protocols struggled to render it in modern galactic standard. Slowly, words began to appear. The first wanderers, known by some as the Builders, exhibited bilateral symmetry and carbon-based biochemistry. Average lifespan, 70 to 100 cycles. Last confirmed sighting. The date that followed sent a chill through every being in the command center. 53,712 years ago. Humans, Zexhai whispered, the ancient word feeling strange in her vocal chambers. The silence that followed was profound. Every member of every spacefaring species knew the legends, the half-mythical stories of the first wanderers who had supposedly seeded the galaxy with life before vanishing into the void. They were the boogeyman stories told to young ones, the cautionary tales about reaching too far into the unknown. Sir, Kess's voice was barely audible above the station's background hum. According to the archives, humans were declared extinct 49,000 years ago. The historical consensus is that they never actually existed, that they were composite myths created from fragmented cultural memories. Zexhai stood slowly, her full height reaching nearly 3 meters as she surveyed her crew. Outside the station's transparent aluminum viewing ports, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, seemingly unchanged since her species had first looked up at the night sky. But something fundamental had shifted in the last few hours. The universe had become a larger, more dangerous, and infinitely more mysterious place. Patch me through to the Galactic Council emergency channels, she said quietly. All members, Priority 1. As her crew worked to establish the connection, Zexhai found herself studying the approaching vessel's trajectory with new eyes. The ship wasn't just heading toward populated space. It was heading directly for the galactic core, toward the Council worlds themselves. The humans, if that's what they truly were coming home. And from the readings her sensors were providing, they had learned much during their long absence from the galaxy. The vessel's energy signatures alone suggested technological advancement far beyond anything the current galactic civilization had achieved. If these were indeed the legendary first wanderers, they had spent their 50,000 years in exile becoming something far more than the primitive spacefaring species described in the ancient texts. The emergency session would convene within hours, representatives from dozens of species gathering in virtual space to discuss what might be the most significant event in galactic history. But as Zexai watched the steady approach of the silent ship, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever decisions the council made, whatever preparations they attempted, it wouldn't matter. The humans were returning, and the galaxy was about to remember why they had once been both revered and feared as the first wanderers. The ship continued its relentless approach, silent and seemingly unstoppable, carrying with it the weight of 50 millennia and secrets that would reshape everything the galaxy thought it knew about itself. The human response. The Galactic Defense Fleet had never mobilized so quickly. Within 72 hours of the Council's emergency session, over 300 vessels from a dozen species had assembled at the outer marker buoys of the Centauri defense grid. Admiral Thexran commanded the fleet from his flagship Determination, a massive Corvan dreadnought whose weapon systems could theoretically crack a small moon. It wasn't enough. They all knew it wasn't enough. The human vessel, for the Council had officially classified it as such after examining the historical evidence, continued its steady approach. Every attempt at interception had failed spectacularly. The ship moved through space like it was swimming rather than flying, effortlessly avoiding weapons fire and defensive positions with maneuvers that violated several fundamental laws of physics. Fleet Admiral, reported Captain Vexara from the bridge of the Voss cruiser Ethereal Dream. Target has altered course again. It's moving through our formation like we're not even here. Thexran's mandibles clicked in frustration as he watched the tactical display. The human ship appeared as a serene blue dot, weaving between his vessels with impossible grace. 3 times they had attempted to force it to stop. 3 times it had simply moved elsewhere, not through hyperspace or quantum tunneling, those they could detect and counter. The ship seemed to exist in several locations simultaneously, choosing which reality it preferred to occupy at any given moment. Weapon status? He growled into his communicator. All ships report targeting solutions impossible to maintain, came the reply from his tactical coordinator. The vessel appears to exist in quantum superposition until the moment we attempt to fire, at which point it definitively occupies a position other than where our weapons are aimed. The implications of such technology sent ripples of unease through the fleet. If humans had mastered quantum uncertainty manipulation on a macro scale, they had advanced beyond anything the current galactic civilization could comprehend, let alone combat. Sir, his communications officer interrupted. Long-range sensors are reporting the vessel has entered the Sol perimeter. It's heading directly for the Council homeworld. Thexran felt his warrior's instincts war with his strategic mind. Every fiber of his being demanded action, demanded that he protect the galactic seat of government from this unknown threat. But his tactical analysis suggested that engaging the human vessel would be not just futile, but potentially catastrophic. They still had no understanding of the ship's true capabilities or intentions. "Stand down weapons," he commanded, the words tasting bitter in his vocal chambers. "All ships maintain distance but continue monitoring. If they wanted to harm us, they've had ample opportunity." The decision proved wise 18 hours later when the human vessel did something that would be discussed in military academies for generations to come. It arrived at the Council homeworld of Prima Tertius and simply stopped, not slowed, not decelerated gradually like any normal spacecraft. One moment it was traveling at near light velocity. The next it hung motionless in orbit above the planet's capital city, its hull gleaming like polished obsidian against the star field. On the surface of Prima Tertius, emergency sessions had been running continuously since the first reports from monitoring station Kepler-7. The great amphitheater that housed the Galactic Council had been sealed and shielded, its defensive systems activated for the first time in 3 centuries. Representatives from 47 species huddled in their environmental suits, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, harmonics, and electromagnetic pulses. Counselor Vorthak, the ancient ethereal who served as the current speaker, attempted to maintain order despite the fear that permeated the chamber like a toxic fog. "We must consider all possibilities," his translated voice echoed through the amphitheater. "The vessel has made no hostile moves." "No hostile moves?" The reply came from Counselor Zephyr, whose crystalline Kithara form flashed with indignant patterns. "It has ignored every attempt at communication, bypassed our defenses, and demonstrated technology that makes our greatest achievements look primitive." "Perhaps," interjected Counselor Him of the insectoid Mantari, "we should consider that our definitions of communication might be insufficient. These beings may operate on wavelengths or dimensions we haven't discovered yet." The debate continued for hours, but was interrupted when every screen, display, and communication device in the chamber simultaneously activated. The image that appeared was grainy at first, then resolved into stunning clarity. The interior of the human vessel. The being that looked back at them was ordinary. Disturbingly, remarkably ordinary. She appeared to be female by human standards, with the bilateral symmetry the archives had described, smooth skin darkened by what might have been solar radiation, and hair the color of burnt copper pulled back in a practical style. Her clothing was simple, a dark blue uniform with minimal ornamentation. Most unsettling of all were her eyes. Brown, warm, and entirely too familiar to species that had spent 50,000 years believing themselves to be alone in their consciousness. "Greetings," she said, and the word carried harmonics that suggested she was speaking in multiple languages simultaneously. The translation protocols identified her words as fluent Galactic Standard, Corvan Battle Cant, Voss Harmonic, and at least 7 other major languages. "I am Captain Sarah Chen, representing the Terran Exodus Fleet. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but we've found that subtlety often leads to misunderstandings." The chamber fell silent. 50,000 years of mythology stood before them, speaking in their own languages with casual fluency. Speaker Vorthak was the first to find his voice. You are human, the first wanderers, but the archives, the historical records, indicate that we went extinct?" "Yes." Captain Chen's smile was both sad and amused. "We allowed that assumption to stand because it served everyone's purposes at the time. The truth is somewhat more complex." She gestured, and the view behind her expanded to show a vista that defied comprehension, a vast space habitat that stretched beyond the limits of the display, filled with cities that floated in zero gravity and surrounded by fleets of vessels that made the human ship they'd encountered look like a shuttle by comparison. "We didn't die out," Chen continued. "We left, voluntarily. Your species, all of your species, were our children in a sense. We guided your early development, seeded some worlds, nudged evolution along beneficial paths. But we also knew that you needed to grow on your own, to find your own paths among the stars." Counselor Zephyr's crystalline form flickered with confusion patterns. "Then why return now, after 50 millennia?" Captain Chen's expression grew serious. "Because we've detected signs of something approaching your galaxy. Something that requires preparation your current level of technological development cannot provide." The display behind her shifted again, showing what appeared to be deep space telescope imagery. At first, the council members saw nothing but darkness between galaxies. Then the image enhanced, revealing structures that shouldn't exist. Geometric, patterns stretching across intergalactic voids, artificial constructs the size of solar systems, moving with purpose through the emptiness. "The Devourers," Chen said simply. "We've encountered them before in other galaxies. They're not biological in any sense you'd understand, but they consume matter and energy with perfect efficiency. They've already processed 17 galaxies that we know of. Their advanced scouts should reach your galactic rim in approximately 200 standard years." The silence that followed was profound. Several council members were accessing historical databases, searching for any reference to such entities. Others were running probability calculations on their personal systems. All of them were grappling with the implications of humanity's return and the threat it heralded. "You've fought them before?" Speaker Vorthak asked. "Fought, studied, learned to counter them, yes. It took us 30,000 years and the resources of 6 galaxies, but we developed effective defensive strategies. More importantly, we learned how to unite disparate species into a cohesive defensive force." "And you're offering to help us?" This from Counselor Him, suspicion evident in her harmonic patterns. "We're offering partnership," Chen corrected. "We can provide technology, strategic knowledge, and tactical support. But the defense of this galaxy must come from its inhabitants. We learned long ago that imposed solutions don't last. You must choose to grow, to advance, to unite. We can only provide the tools and knowledge to make it possible." The display shifted once more, showing technical schematics that made several council members' enhancement devices overload from attempting to process the information density. Propulsion systems that folded space rather than moving through it. Weapons that operated on quantum uncertainty principles. Defensive technologies that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "The choice is yours," Captain Chen said. "We can share this knowledge, help you prepare for what's coming. But it will require unprecedented cooperation between your species, the kind of unity that has never existed in this galaxy's recorded history." "And if we refuse?" Counselor Zephyr asked, though the question seemed rhetorical. Chen's expression remained neutral, but her eyes held depths that spoke of experiences no current galactic citizen could imagine. "Then in 200 years, the Devourers will arrive, to find a galaxy full of scattered primitive civilizations, and they will process you with the same efficiency they've shown everywhere else." The chamber erupted in debate once more, but this time the tone was different. Instead of fear and suspicion, the discussion centered on practicalities, resource allocation, technology transfer protocols, joint military commands. The transformation from xenophobic terror to collaborative planning happened with startling speed, driven by the reality of an external threat that dwarfed any interspecies conflicts. As the council members argued and planned, Captain Chen watched with satisfaction. Humanity had learned much during their long exile, but perhaps the most important lesson was this. Sometimes the best way to help someone grow was to give them a problem they could only solve by working together. Outside the council chambers, the human vessel maintained its silent vigil. Inside its hull, Captain Chen prepared the first wave of technology transfers and began the delicate process of introducing her species back into galactic society. There was much work to be done, and only 2 centuries to prepare for a war that would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. But for the first time in 50,000 years, humanity was no longer alone among the stars, and neither, they hoped, would their children be when the real test came.